it has really felt like this Harry has been caught with his pants down multiple times of things he hasn't expected. And then when he is like faced with them, he just kind of like runs.
Both of them still don't have perfect information and still feel like they are the puppets of some other puppet master.
Now, what if? Let me tickle your tuning fork, if you will. Okay. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Sterling and I are talking about the hit Apple TV sci-fi fantasy show Foundation Season 3, Episode 6, The Shape of Time, so spoilers are ahead. And if you are enjoying the content, a like would be appreciated. And if you want to stay up to date with all of our breakdowns and discussions, just hit that subscribe button and turn on that bell for notifications. And with that, Sterling, let's talk about Day and Mycogen. What are your thoughts?
I really like this place. And I know I often say this about the worlds because I do feel like they create these unique worlds that really feel lived in. But I like the look and the feel. I like the character design. Everything about it is interesting and different from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I know we have said this a lot about the show being able to create these new, interesting environments that feel real, feel lived in. And this was a great example of that. Just like the set design, different props they were using, costume, wardrobe, they all looked something we hadn't seen in Foundation before. And it was awesome.
It's got kind of like a Blade Runner-y look, you know?
Yeah.
Where the atmosphere is dark and dirty, but then there's like lots of bright neon lights, you know, that give like these huge contrasts between these like dark, dirty corners and like these super bright, you know, super clean signs. So it's interesting compared to, you know, like the palace on Trantor or, you know, the fields over here or the whatever it is. And I like some of the details. Like I like the fact that it seemed very wet there. Like I noticed that the streets had standing water on them. There was a lot of like moisture coming out of the vents, you know, which seems very appropriate if one of the big things that they do is like mushroom growing.
Yeah, and I do think Blade Runner is a great comparison because I feel like Blade Runner is, there's a lot of this like wealthier class of people, which, you know, is kind of like Empire and Trantor. And then it does seem like the more cyberpunk, seedy elements are more of the like have-nots. And so it's thriving, it's bustling, it seems like it's doing well on its own, but it does feel like it is this like have-not section of Trantor that's like, yeah, they're here, but they maybe live by their own set of rules. Like they live under Empire, but like they still are kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, I mean the fact that Empire has this relationship with where like it's part of Trantor, but apparently Empire is generally kind of scared of going there because they're worried about being overtaken by the people there. But it's interesting, like there's interesting culture, you know, I liked the wrapping of the street food. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that there is, you know, street food compared to, you know, if you think of like on the surface of Trantor, they probably have like dine-in restaurants, you know, versus a lot of like tightly packed street vendors in an alleyway. But I liked like the wrapping. I liked the naming of the two characters whose names we learned, you know, the fact that they're named after the names reminded me of some indigenous names, but then also an interesting thing that they like put a number at the end, you know,
which that felt a little bit like more in line with like the robotics thing. Like I feel like when you're thinking of like a name and it has like a number on it, like I would associate that with like a robot. Right? Like,
oh, that totally sounds like usernames.
Right. Like, oh, I'm this 17 or
I'm
this
cool,
person.
Cool dog 132.
Yeah. And I'm what's up dog, 389.
Yeah.
So that, but also kind of like,
I wonder if it's related to that where it's like that their affection, infatuation, whatever, you know, like the reverence they have for robots causes them to like bring aspects of robots into their lives.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking of, why they had the numbers on the end. Like you think, I also was thinking of like Star Wars when you think of like some of the droids are like IG-11 or R2D2. You know, they have these well, I guess R2D2 not really, but names, the numbers. So that's what it felt like, that, or that they're almost like so regarded as like less than people down there, that like, yeah, they have names, but they also have numbers associated with them to be like cattle number 18, you know, come on up, like, because there's this discrepancy. So it is interesting with these numbers, and I think we'll probably learn more about them.
It was also interesting because she said something like, you know, my full name is whatever it was. And that could be like maybe her full first name is that, you know, like like my middle name is Douglas, and some people might go with like Doug or Dougie, like a shortened version of that. But it almost sounded like that could be the full name. Maybe they don't have 3 names on Mycogen. You know, maybe they just have like a shortened version that they go by, and then there's like this one longer version that includes numbers. And who knows, like maybe that numbering system can give you an idea of like where the family branch comes from or something like that. Like,
yeah, maybe those numbers are like surnames in a way. So like I'm part of the 17 group or the 22 group. I mean, I think we'll probably learn more about it. I want to know your feelings on, how do you feel about Day? Like, he goes on this crazy journey. He has Song's memories to show her, and she doesn't want them. She's adamant of no. She has a life partner. Where does this leave Day, you think?
I think this is a big awakening moment for him, because this is probably like the most vulnerable that he's been in his existence, as far as like, yeah, he's been beaten before, but he's not generally alone without his nanites, without, you know, his clavigers, without any kind of protection in a world that seems to fear and hate him. But he at least felt like he had a purpose of, you know, my love is here and my love loves me, and kind of realizing that a lot of the adoration that you might think you have in your life might just be people fearing you. Like,
yeah,
how many of your experiences are real? How many of your friends are real? How many of your loves are real? Like, how much of your life is real? And learning that in this environment where it's like, can he go back? Would they let him leave?
Right. Well, and it makes me question, from the beginning, you know, Song was having this love relationship with Day, but yet that version of Song would still have her memories from Mycogen. Like, they don't wipe her memories from before. It's like she gets picked, she does her thing, she gets sent away. And what if Song's like deep game plan, because it seems like she's maybe in some kind of relationship with somebody that is like a soldier of some type, maybe a warrior that is trying to take down Empire. And what if Song's whole goal was to disarm Day enough to be like, come down to Mycogen, you know, let's go live our lives out there, and we'll, you know, we'll be happy. It'll be great. Everything will be rainbows and kittens. And then as soon as he gets there, cool, now we have Empire as a prisoner to use against, you know, Empire. So her motivations from the beginning could have all been kind of seedy.
They definitely could. I took it a very different way, in that, you know, I feel like Empire takes more than Empire gives. You know, like Empire takes tithes from all of the different worlds that it protects. But as we saw from season 1, it doesn't always protect these worlds. You know, like if they get in fights with each other, as long as it doesn't escalate too much, Empire is like, this isn't my problem. You know, you guys are in the outskirts, you guys kind of deal with this. And then when it gets big enough where it disturbs Empire's peace,
right,
that's when Empire steps in
and swings a big old stick.
Yeah. And this kind of felt like another situation where, I think kind of like with the Blade Runner reference, like this is probably, I don't want to say that this area is necessarily poor, but it doesn't seem like it has all the amenities that Empire could give areas.
Sure.
Like they have to work hard for their stuff when there's probably technologies that Empire has that could assist them with a lot of this work so that life wouldn't have to be as hard as it is. And to me, it felt like I don't know if she was a courtesan, maybe, that this might be one of those opportunities where people have a chance to make a good amount of money. And yes, the work, like to me, I felt like there was a big question of morality here of like, I think it's messed up to take their memories because then there is no accountability for the work. Like who's to say what Empire does with these women because nobody gets to keep their memories when they leave.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're taking a big risk taking a job like that. And yeah, there's probably a really good reward. Right. And that's what it felt like for me. Was it Songbird? Is that her name?
I think it's just Song.
Song. Okay.
Yeah.
But the long thing was a longer name.
Yeah, I think she might have had Bird in the longer name, but I think he just knew her as Song.
Yes. So like to me, the way it came off was like Song took this as a risk knowing that there would be a good payoff. And then the potentially scary thing is that Empire took a really good liking to her, which she probably didn't want because she's in a relationship with somebody else and was hoping to like get her money and leave. And she might have been too scared to say, hey, my contract's done. I'd like to go. And ended up staying there kind of against her will, not because she explicitly said no, but because she was potentially too scared to say no.
That's fair. That's really, this makes this whole dynamic interesting because it did seem like there were times when Song and Day were together and she would, kind of push back on him. Like she didn't seem afraid of him. So I feel like there could be so many interpretations of like, maybe she was just trying to get a paycheck and then go, but too scared to do it. Or maybe she is in this like...
Maybe she is planning something.
And she was like, oh, I've got this guy on a hook. He wants to come to Mycogen with me. Like, because I think that's like another thing, right? Like if she's trying to go to Mycogen with him, like he's going to her place, instead of being like, oh, hey, no, like let's just live out here to like protect her family from the potential of Empire coming down and rooting around down there. But also taking him down there so that if they have the opportunity to have a hostage that is Empire, this is very interesting. I love where they're going with this. I love that we don't really know Song's true intentions. I think we'll potentially get to see where she may have lied or what her true intentions were. I do think that we will see Song and I forget her partner's name teaming up with Day. They'll eventually be like, all right, well, he did come alone. He doesn't have nanites. He's basically weak. We could do whatever we want with him. Maybe they're going to like start using him as leverage, but then form an alliance with him when they realize he hates Empire as much as they hate Empire.
Right. And I think that potentially this could be a very strong group to work against the Mule when the Mule takes down the library.
Yeah.
Right? Because we found out like that's the vision of like that's where that fight was. I think it was the library. So obviously the Mule will be coming to Trantor and there's going to be a lot of destruction. And I think that what we've kind of learned about Mycogen is that they are resilient. And so I think Trantor obviously is going to be a big target for the Mule, but I think he's going to be focused on like the palace and where the Clavigers are and kind of like the imperial part of Trantor is going to be his focus, not thinking about the fact that there is this like dark and strong force deep within Trantor that's tough to stamp out. I mean, the fact that however many centuries ago, Cleon killed like 20,000 people and they've come back from it. I think these are a strong and resilient people and a potential strong force to have fight against the mule, even if they're not necessarily at this point fighting for Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they may team up with this Cleon, but still not agree with, like, Empire as a whole.
Sure.
But still fighting for their planet, or at least their part of it.
Right. And I mean, if they also see, like, you know, because I feel like there is going to be a lot of Foundation there trying to fight the mule as well. And maybe Mycogen sees the Foundation as this new symbol of hope to be like, okay, I am more aligned with Foundation because they don't want Empire to be around either. So I will support Foundation in trying to take down the mule.
Yeah, I could definitely see it connecting that way. Unless, like, Foundation is kind of crumbling a little bit right now. And two, maybe they're moving in the right direction now that they're finally having a meeting with the traders. But, like, before, it kind of feels like Foundation getting to a point kind of like Empire, where they also are taking and not necessarily giving back. You know, so it's like they're getting the good stuff from the traders, but refuse to actually give them a seat at the table to discuss what the traders want and need.
Right.
You know, it seems like there's corruption, and there's, like, you know, the strength of, like, the inburs of just, like, trying to create this, like, cush life for themselves, where they don't care about the problems happening in the rest of the galaxy. You know, like, the mule, he's not our problem. Doesn't matter if he's, like, burning planets.
Yeah, he's not coming to Foundation. He's on Calgon. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, as long as he's not messing with us.
Right.
Which feels like that completely goes against why the Foundation was created. You know? Yeah.
And I think that, like, you know, there's the part with Imber where he is interrogating Pritchard about where he had gone. And, like, who are you serving? The logs are wiped. You've used this much fuel, but you didn't come here. You did all these things. Like, doesn't feel like you're working for Foundation. And I think his response of him saying, like, I'm following Harri Seldon's plan, kind of is like a jab, right? Like, it's like Foundation, this version of Foundation is kind of like doing stuff to line their own pockets versus, like, following what the plan was to do. And so Pritchard, who is, you know, part of the second Foundation, he is following the plan still. And his goal is to, like, make sure the plan goes off without a hitch, where, like, Imber doesn't seem to care anymore. It's like, oh, I got mine. Don't care.
Interesting take. I didn't think of it as, like, a jab, and I can totally see that. I thought of it more of, like, a dodge. Yeah. Where, like, he's technically, you could read that as you're working for Foundation because Foundation is supposed to be doing Seldon's plan, but it's also vague enough that it's like it could mean something else, which is exactly what it does mean is something else, you know? So it's like,
and that's how I took it originally.
Without answering the question.
Yeah, that's how I took it originally too, is very much just like he's saying the right thing. And even Imber says, like, oh, vague, very vague of you like say that. But also it does feel like it's a little bit of a jab of, like, I'm still doing the right thing. You're corrupt. But was that the intention? I don't know. It just is. It works well. I
did not expect to see Foundation this far on its back foot this soon.
I did not expect that either. You know, and also, okay, we saw this big attack on the Foundation. What is with this Harri Seldon in the vault? He's just seemed so weird this season. Like, in the beginning, when he's talking to Ebling, you know, he kind of, like, pushes him out right away. How did you get in here? He kind of, like, is dodgy. Like, why did you give the Prime Radiant to Empire? And then in this one, they're in the vault. He doesn't expect to be attacked by the mule. He doesn't even know who the mule is, which makes sense, you know, that he wouldn't know who the mule is. And then just everything's going wrong, and he just pushes everyone out. Just null filled up. Like, this just seems like a very avoidant Harri. It seems like a very, like, weirdly selfish Harri. Like, Harri has kind of seemed selfish by doing things for psychohistory, but this has seemed like really like a very odd version of him.
And it seems like a version of him that is least able to self-correct when they get new information. You know, there have been outliers in the past, and Harri has had to deal with the outliers and kind of like tweak things to deal with the outliers. But man, he was so far off. Like, he came out of there with his normal cockiness of like, I know everything. And he's like, you know, I basically saying like, I understand the third crisis is that these two groups are working so differently that there's going to be war between them. And then Inber's like, no, we're having a discussion with the other side. Like, we're possibly going to fix all of this. And Harri did not seem like that was on Harri's bingo card.
Yeah, it's just, it has really felt like this Harri has been caught with his pants down multiple times of things he hasn't expected. And then when he is like faced with them, he just kind of like runs. It just seems very odd.
Yeah, I know he put up the null field with Ebling previously, and I was kind of surprised by that. I was a little bit less surprised by it this time, just because I did think that there was possibly a good explanation of there's an attack on Foundation. The null field potentially can protect, you know, the vault from the attack. And so it would possibly be better to have that survive, especially since there's a second Foundation. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that was just like self-preservation of, at the very least, like the vault needs to continue. And then, you know, if a bunch of stuff crumbles and then future people find the vault, you know, he can emerge at that point and like give them the information in order to like help shorten the darkness. But man, there's something going on with him. He doesn't seem like he's quite got it as much as he used to.
Or at least just the Vault Harri. You know, we don't know where the other Harri is and what he's doing. But like Vault Harri just has seemed very odd this season. Now, like you were mentioning, I did not expect this so soon. But the Mule attacking Terminus, new Terminus, not Terminus. This is crazy implications. Like I thought, you know, he got the jump gate. They're going to be fighting on Trantor. We'll go over there. Yada, yada, yada. But he's creating a warpath. He destroyed Calgan, the fleet. Now he's on Foundation's doorstep, coming after Magnifico. Like, this is some high-stakes stuff right now.
I think his intention is to attack first before the enemy can even know that he's going to attack and put up their defenses. You know, so instead of like, I feel like most people would try and amass power and then use that amassing of power in order to try and attack like their biggest enemy. Versus it feels like he knows that he has, you know, because of his mentalic skills, that he has an upper hand that can allow him to do devastating attacks with small groups, you know, against an enemy. And he's just using that to his advantage to just go straight for the throat.
Yeah.
You know, to potentially, like, if he is able to take down Terminus, I think it'd be pretty easy for the rest of Foundation to crumble. And I think he has the same idea probably for Trantor of, you know, he can just go for the throat before they can form a response, before they can join sides, anything like that. He'll just cripple them. I did think something interesting with his portrayal. I don't know if you noticed the scene when he woke up.
Yes.
You know, from the dream.
Yeah, that was the same one from the previous season, but give it a little bit more context of what he was, where he came from.
I thought it was interesting because the camera work was different for the two characters, like the camera on the Mule and the camera on whoever the other person is. The camera on the Mule seemed, it wasn't just handheld, you know, where it's like you can see like small camera movements because it's not on a tripod. Instead, they were oftentimes a little bit kind of jerky and like larger, almost intentional. It almost like gave me the feeling of like you being on edge watching him.
Yeah.
You know, potentially like being scared, breathing heavy, like, you know, your perspective is shifting a lot. And like the shots of the other person were actually like almost tripod steady.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there was like a very big contrast between the two, which made it stick out even more.
Right. And I think it's part of that visual storytelling of like the mule has been plagued. Like this has been, and like kind of like what we mentioned before, it's like that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like Gale's been looking into the future and being like, this guy's going to kill me. I got to go end him. And then the mule just seeing these visions of Gale his whole life, knowing that she's like the end of him or potentially the end of him. And how can I stop this from happening? Like, what can I do? And apparently he's had these nightmares forever. Like he's been having these bad dreams. He feels like he's been living these different lives. And then he finally gets the name of the person that's supposed to kill him or, you know, put an end to him. That's terrifying. Like if I was going through a whole life being like, okay, somebody's about to kill me. Like, I just have to have nightmares about this person that's going to end my life. Like, I don't feel bad for the mule because he is a terrible person. But, like, there is a bit of, like, empathy there of, like, this guy's been tortured for his whole life, of fear of this woman coming to kill him. Like, make me a little crazy, too.
Yeah, and it does kind of explain why he seems broken. And I don't know, a lot of his decisions come off as like unhinged decisions, which this kind of gives context to that. And I agree with you where like it's hard to say like sympathize, but I can at least like understand why it's like you don't want to sympathize with just like a murderer. But,
right.
I mean, but I guess like you can, I think you possibly can like sympathize to like understand, but you can sympathize with somebody and still condemn their actions. Yes. Mm-hmm. And say like, look, I understand that this thing was terrible. And I do legitimately feel bad that you went through that. However, it is still bad to kill people.
Yeah. So great writing of a villain. It does, you know, he's not just evil for the sake of evil, which I think is good. He has, you know, motivations, whether they be corrupted or not. Again, the actor portraying him is doing a phenomenal job. He just invokes terror. Like the way that he was able to control the warden, even though she was in the vault. Yeah. Like the vault is like kind of outside space and time. Like you can fit a whole bunch of people in there. You can kind of like fold on itself. That's how I have 2 prime radiants. And he was able to get in her mind in the vault to like pull up the communicator. That seems really powerful. And seeing how all of these ships on this like giant scale, like you kind of think that he has, you know, we saw the ships that were right by him in the first episode that he had take out each other. But then we see like all these ships in like, it feels wider. It feels like he has a bigger net that he's casting over Terminus. And it is legitimately frightening.
It is. And so like, I don't know, this definitely feels like it matches where season 2 made it seem like it was going, because it definitely seemed like he would have a devastating impact.
Yeah.
You know, and he was foreshadowed in season 1. And so I do think that they are giving good payoff to his character of like really showing that he is as strong and as bad as they've been leading it, you know, to look like.
Yeah.
So that's good payoff, because if it was just like not to like belittle the other crises, but it's like the first crisis was, you know, potentially going to take down Terminus. I know that it was like, you know, the Foundation was already on an inhospitable planet, you know, so that was like it was hard enough for them to survive with that, you know, without like a people potentially taking them out. And I know that they were important to like shortening the darkness, so you want them to win, but it still felt like it was just like against this like one group on this one planet. And I feel like the second crisis, you know, was a little bit bigger, but still not, you know, this scale. And this season, it does feel like the stakes have really gone through the roof. I'm curious, like, how Demerzel and Gaal are going to factor into this.
Yeah.
because I didn't think about until recently that they both are kind of like the shadow powers in their two perspective groups.
Right.
You know? So it's like, yeah, Terminus may be falling, but also there is a second foundation, and the foundation is more than just Terminus. Like there's a ton of planets it covers. So it's like she's kind of like the shadow puppet there, you know, Gaal. Right. And then like Demerzel, we've learned from last season, is kind of like the shadow power behind Empire. Empire.
Yeah.
So like I know that it matters to her that Empire doesn't die. Like the Cleons.
Right.
But in the end, it really she is the one that is like calling the shots.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still so painful for Dem because you see that, Gaal makes the point of like, oh, you have them growing. You could just grow a new one.
Yeah.
And she's just like, it's not about that. It's like, I literally raised that one from a baby. Like she is this very motherly figure towards the Cleon. She does... whether it's just her programming that Cleon the First gave her.
So tough to tell.
But she does have this love for them, and seeing the like pain that a robot can feel based on losing, a Cleon that you could just make again. And he's right back and he has all his memories from that when you raised him. But yet there's that one that you raised still that is just flying off into space, dying, died. I think we got it confirmed that Dawn is.
Yeah.
I still don't know if I believe it.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Because the thing was like he was wearing his spacesuit.
Yeah. But I mean, how much oxygen's in there? Could you pick him up in time? Apparently his nanites aren't giving his vitals anymore. I don't know how, if the nanites can like supply oxygen to the blood or what, if they can, I don't know how that works. But again, it didn't really there was no body, and I feel like in a TV show, you gotta have a body. Yeah. It is a little different with the Cleons, but.
Right. I do think it's interesting, the second trip into the future.
Yeah, that was.
So she's orbiting the ergosphere of a black hole. To me, there's like two potential things I think about that. Is like, one of them is this a way to hide? Because as long as you're outside of the event horizon, time would slow almost to a halt, kind of like when she's going, like when she comes out, it would be much later. Like there's the whole time dilation thing going on. And so this would be kind of like going into the cryo thing, but also because most light information, whatever, that goes towards the black hole that gets that close to the event horizon would most likely get sucked in and not return. It would be a very good place to hide. So that's a potential option. Or, if we're talking about like the folding of time, and we've already talked about the folding of space with like the prime radiant, does this have to do with like, there's always been a theory, I don't think it's super scientific, but like a theory that black holes could be like wormholes, a way to travel from one place to another, and even possibly the way to travel from like one time to another. And so I just wonder about like why she is there.
Yeah, no, I have several theories about Gaal and being there. So first, to kind of touch on what you were saying, they do have, jump gates. They are able to do these ways of traveling, the whisper ships that are able to, in a way, like fold time on itself to get to certain places.
Yeah.
So I don't know if what they're doing with this black hole is for travel, but I'm more imagining that, Gaal can look into the future, right? And this is all she sees. So it doesn't seem like there is like a future outside of getting out of this black hole. And I'm wondering if potentially the way to beat the mule as well is to take him into a black hole or something. And maybe Gaal sacrificing herself brings him to the black hole to save the greater piece of humanity. And so that's why for Gaal, time seemingly, like she says there's nothing there, which would be kind of crazy. Like you would think that if all of humanity died, there would still be planets, stars, like the mule's powers are not big enough to destroy the galaxy, you would assume. And the fact that it's just darkness there makes me think that it's because Gaal gets stuck there, whether she takes the mule with him, self-sacrificing, I don't know. Or it could be, I do like your theory that it is a way to put Gaal into the future.
The show has always had like a few things that have gone from season to season, some form of Harri, some form of the Cleons, and then so far Gaal and Demerzel have actually been not just some form of, but it's just straight up them.
Yeah.
Gaal has been the narrator this whole time.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, this does feel like her story, or at least her telling this galaxy story,
Sure.
Or this Foundation story, whatever. Like she is the storyteller of it. And so I do kind of feel like, I don't think the point of it is to put her into the next crisis, but I think that will potentially be a side effect, is that whatever she's doing, around this black hole will, as a side effect, allow her to still be around for the next crisis, because it does feel like this is her story to tell.
That's fair. Yeah, no, you're right, because she does. And even I thought there was one, I don't know if it was last episode or this episode, there was one time she narrated something that felt so like far out of her scope. Like usually she like has like an overarching narrative that's like, well, Foundation is this and the human perseverance and what is a dream? It's like, it's kind of like a whole thing. But then it was like, I think it was when she was maybe talking about like Randu Mallow or something. And she was like, oh, but Beta and Randu are actually, keen. I can't remember if it was this last episode or this episode, something like that. And I thought, I was like, that was an interesting one for Gaal to like narrate. Like I wouldn't expect her to like chime in on like this random event happening that wasn't like a grandiose like call out.
From the very beginning, like literally season 1, episode 1, she narrated about the mule, Salvor Harding, and Hober Mallow, and, made it clear that like the version of her that is doing this narration is somebody from far in the future that already knows about these events and is just kind of describing them to us.
Yeah, no. Definitely I get that too. It just felt there was one that felt kind of weird.
Yeah.
Where it was like, because it's usually when she like talks, it's always like, like very philosophical, kind of metaphorical.
Yeah, metaphor, yes.
And this was the one time, like even with the whole, in the season 1 when she talks about Hober Mallow and the mule, it's always like, it was like, these three have their part to play in this like grand opera. Yeah. But then there is this one, I can't remember if it's this episode or last episode, where she like zooms in and is like, and now they're all talking to each other and having a good time. And, they're trying to fight for what they need. And then that one kind of just felt weird. Of all her narrations, that was the only weird one.
I think it's because she, like us, has a soft spot for Mallows.
Who doesn't?
And so, exactly, so it's like where everything else she's able to like, look at it from a very removed perspective, and not be like too involved. And like you said, like describe the kind of like the philosophy and the metaphors, what is it to be a ghost? What is it to die, to do all this other stuff? But then she gets to a Mallow and she's like,
I love
this
them.
Mallow with this Mallow.
Randu is just trying to argue for the traitors. He is a good Mallow. A marshmallow.
A marshmallow. That's yes.
I would name my kid Marshmallow if my last name was Mallow.
Random point. Maggie's instrument reminds me very much of the theremin.
It does. The sound of it is definitely theremin adjacent.
The sound is that kind of like electronic synthy kind of sound, but also it seemed like, unlike most instruments, it didn't seem like he was interacting with it physically. Most of the time, you're manipulating holes or like the length of pipes, to affect how air travels through, around, whatever. But in this case, it seemed like he was interacting with a field, like his hand wasn't necessarily touching it. It more had to do with something like that. So it reminded me of the theremin, which then reminded me of Severance.
Which is also an Apple TV exclusive. Why does Apple TV love their theremins?
Yes.
I did see a theremin comparison. I thought about that a lot when
you did?
Well, no, I mean, I didn't see it. I just, in my mind, when we had been watching, I had thought of theremin as well because of just the tone of it. Just kind of sounds like that, like, woo. But then I think in this episode, he put his mouth on the thing, and that is how you not play a theremin. So a theremin is not an air instrument.
Right. I mean, it seemed like maybe it's a combo.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of different pieces to make those noises work.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one question related to Mycogen that I'm curious. Okay. Do you think that Mycogen has robots there? Like, are we going to see more robots than Demerzel?
I certainly wasn't thinking it, and I don't think so, just because Song seemed so intrigued when she found out that Demerzel was a robot. It almost... The impression I got, now I know that we don't know all the information, so it could be wrong on this. Maybe there's some perspective that changes this. To me, it kind of came off of like, if you had like a Christian see Jesus, like not a vision, but like see him and be like, I knew it. Like, I knew it was true, but now like I know it's true. Like I see him, he's here. And that's kind of the way that it felt to me, was like, she had these beliefs that the robots would come back. And this is like, it's happening.
Now, what if, let me tickle your tuning fork, if you will.
Okay.
Okay, so imagine, what if Mycogen, in a weird way, has been housing robots, right? And think of them as like even lower than the people of Mycogen. Like these are the bottom of the barrel. They don't have rights. They don't have, they're not afforded luxuries. Maybe some of them are breaking down and not doing
Is this Blade Runner?
It could be Blade Runner. This might be Blade Runner 2. But I thought it was Star Wars. And no, it's Foundation. It's Foundation.
Okay, so they have the robots. The robots don't have rights. Maybe they're breaking down.
And these are
so they're potentially housing and protecting old robots, not necessarily like there's new robots that have popped
Correct.
up.
They're like not building new robots. It's like robots that have survived the war, that are hiding out, that are like keeping a low profile. These are like the refugees or anything like that, of just like keeping these away from Trantor's eyes. And maybe Song's excitement, or like seeing Jesus, was seeing a robot that wasn't breaking down in a position of power. A position of power.
Yeah.
She's like, there is a robot, the my deity, that is actually running Empire.
Right.
And maybe that's where her awe comes from. It's like, I never thought I would see a robot in a position of power.
That, I could definitely see that, because I feel like so like going back to the Jesus analogy, like, if the robots are kind of like the gods in her religion, and she's seeing them actively crumble around her, they're in like terrible condition, that would be like if a Christian saw, like a broken down Jesus. Yeah. It wouldn't be great for their faith. It'd still be Jesus, but it wouldn't be how you would expect to see him. Yeah, that could potentially be exactly what you described, where it's like, oh yeah, in great condition. Like, she could help the other robots to get back to what they should be. And the fact that, like, the first Cleon took the robot fixing tools away from them might be the reason that their robots are crumbling, because they no longer have the tools to like care for them.
Yeah.
I could see this.
See, and I had the theory that Demerzel was going to beat the Mule because she's a robot. But then when we've been talking about how Mycogen is going to rise up and fight the Mule, it does feel like that potentially Mycogen could beat the Mule with their robots. So because we also made it a point when Demerzel and Gaal, when she was like, you have these powers like the Mule does, like, can you show me? And she was like, well, I can't because you're not a person. But like, and she's like, oh, I can go into your sinuses, ocular. It's not going to be pleasant, whatever. But she specifically was like, the Mentalics abilities will not work on a robot. So that makes me believe Mycogen has a bunch of robots that are going to overthrow the Mule.
Interesting. Also, when you mentioned the thing about Demerzel and how it was going to be unpleasant, when Gaal was then like, well, I have to feel like I can't breathe, it reminded me of the fact that like Demerzel had literally was choking around a moment ago.
It's like, I can do
it's
that.
like, sure, like,
yeah.
Like that's what I was about to do to you. I can just pick that up.
I did like the dynamic and the charisma between Gaal and Dem, because they both seem like they're kind of in these positions of power of like moving these chess pieces, and like they're like the opponents sitting across from each other, and just little dialogue thing. Also, Demerzel's actress is always a delight on screen.
And also, like, even though both of them are basically the shadow puppet masters of their respective kingdoms, both of them still don't have perfect information and still feel like they are the puppets of some other puppet master. So it's like Gaal just found out that Harri kept from her the information that Demerzel was a robot. So it's like he still hasn't shared everything with Gaal.
Right.
So it's still like, even though old Harri has left, it still feels like he's kind of the thing that started her.
Still doing Harri stuff.
And then like same thing with like, Cleon the First and like Demerzel, where it's like, yes, Demerzel might technically be kind of puppet mastering everything from the shadows, but also there's like an original puppet master that got
made her do all
puppetry
this.
going.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, man, that was a great scene. And okay, so it seemed to me that if Demerzel is found out to be a robot, she kills these people anyway. So it seems like she would kill Gaal for knowing this, or erase her memory, yada, 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 one of those two. And when she was strangling her, and at the end she says, I thought, when our conversation first started, I thought I was going to kill you. Like, I thought, there's no way she's getting out of this one. Which I love that scene.
I was just about to murder you.
I was just about to kill you. And I didn't think you were going to get out of it. But then you said some great things. It does feel surprising that Dem would just kind of leave Gaal and not.
But Gaal has, for 300 years, she has managed to keep herself hidden and her intentions hidden. So I think that Demerzel trusts that this is somebody who would keep this secret and keep that, be hidden well enough that secret isn't going to get out of her. So I think she kind of sees an equal in Gaal.
Yeah, I could see that they see equals in each other. And I think at this moment, with her programming of keeping Empire alive, I think she thinks Gaal might be the best hope for that, especially learning of the Mule, what he can do, what his abilities are. Seeing firsthand the destruction he causes, he's like, okay, maybe I don't trust Gaal, maybe I don't like Gaal, but she is one of the better options to keep the Empire going, even though she's actively trying to destroy the Empire.
Yep.
But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along. Come back next week as we will tackle Foundation Season 3, Episode 7. We look forward to having you, but until then, I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.